Spoiler alert, I didn't actually get second across the line. Hello and welcome. For those new to my channel, welcome. For those returning, welcome back. This is the pan flat stage of the flat as fast series. And I'm starting this on the last stage, or rather the last lap of this stage. And the reason why I'm doing that is because the first essentially 3 laps, because even though this is a 3-lap stage, the lead in is basically an entire lap. For those of you who raced it, know exactly what I'm talking about. So those first essentially 3 laps around Richmond were basically uneventful. As we, hit the U-turn and coming up to the finish line banner here to start our official last lap, the pace right now is pretty mild in the 200s, but what I noticed in this stage is that as we got through the banner, the pace picked up a bit. Now I'm on the Pinarello Dogma F 2024 and the Zip 808 wheels. Last time I raced this, I was on the Uranium bike, which according to the Biker Zwift app was the best bike to choose. Because it was fairly heavy bike and, would fare well in this kind of a race, along with the DT Swiss disc wheels. I'm not on the disc wheels this time because I wanted to see how these 808s do. Now, when you look at the Zwift bike app, it shows the DT Swiss discs as the best wheels for this stage. But when you look at the individual wheels broken down, there's going to be another video that I'm going to put together that kind of talks through the exactly what I'm looking at. So I'm not going to reference it here or talk too much about it here. But basically, the Zip 808s are the wheels that seem to have the best aerodynamics without any penalties whatsoever. So what I mean by that is there's no, penalty for climbing. There's no, draft penalty, anything like that. So it's, almost as good as the disc wheels. Not quite as good as the disc wheels. Still some deficit from the disc wheels, but the disc wheels also do get a serious penalty on climbs. Now, even though these climbs are draftable, they're 1-2% with a couple sections spiking into the 3-4% for a few meters. I wanted to see how they did in this kind of a stage where it's basically flat. And so as we're going downhill here, you see I'm in the 250s, 260s, and I kind of hold that range for the entirety of the race. I am feeling like these wheels were good, but at the same time, they were still, they were fast, but they, required some effort to maintain. Throughout the race, I was jumping into the, really staying in the upper 100s, 200s area, and then I'd have to constantly jump into the, mid 200s to upper 200s just to stay within the group. Even on the flat, 0% flat sections, I would have to, stay um, in the mid 200s just to keep up. And right now it looks like I didn't realize this at the time, but my recording was freezing a bit. I was trying to record my camera video and my game video on 2 separate sessions, and I guess, each of them suffered separately at times. But as you can see here, just, trying to manage this, this section as I'm riding through. And again, I felt good. I didn't feel like I was, redlining the whole time. You can look at my power graph and you can see that I'm, you know, I hit into the reds, certain times, but primarily staying in the zone 3, zone 4 range, so putting in some decent effort. But my average wattage right now is still, just under my FTP, 20-30 points under my FTP, which is doing pretty good. And what I noticed on this stage is when it comes to tactics, so I'm in the mid pack right now, getting a decent draft, about 100 watt savings of draft, and we're going up this 1-2% incline, starting to make our way up through the back half of this lap. And this part here, from the get go, every time we hit this part, the group would push hard. Whoever was on the front would push much harder in order to, you know, keep the momentum. And so what ended up happening is we were, holding the mid 200s, upper 200s, and that was hurting. That was, especially as we got to this fourth, lap, that was, starting to hurt. And I really wanted to, save as much as I can, because I had started realizing that, the first couple times around, I thought maybe a breakaway could happen. Some guys were pushing pretty hard. We ended up finishing this stage about 30 seconds or so faster than what we did on Monday. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit why that happened. But as we start to get around this bend, the previous laps, the pace would rocket. We'd get into I'd get into the mid 300s, 400s, just to keep up. This time around, it ended up, staying very civil. And when that happened, I thought, okay, maybe, this is going to be a mild finish. Maybe they're going to, everybody's going to wait till we get through this roundabout, and then on the U-turn start to push a little bit harder. In previous laps, like I said, this part here, we were all strung out, and I was having to put some decent effort just to stay on. So as you can see, my watts are still holding in the mid 200s. I'm pushing into the upper 200s just to make sure that I stay on, knowing that, at any moment this could pop off. As you can see, I peaked into the 300s there for a second. And so as, we start to get closer and closer to that roundabout, I'm thinking about, okay, when can I shift up into the right gear? And, you know, when can I launch my arrow power up? Because I have the arrow power up, I know that, I'm not going to have as much time as people with the draft bonus or draft power up to um, be able to, benefit from it. So I know that at this point, I've got to use my arrow power up essentially after I make the turn and start to get into the official sprint segment. And so right now, I'm just shifting up into my highest gear so I can start bringing down my cadence, knowing that we're, meters away from hitting this U-turn. I know that, you know, I can hold a good, 300-400 meter sprint. I see people start to launch. And so I end up, launching myself and really just pushing as hard as I can, getting into the, mid to upper 800s, and, holding that as best I can. As I start to fly through, I shift down one just to be able to, keep a higher wattage. But at this point, I'm already, at my max. I launch my arrow power up, and I just do my best to get through as many people as possible, and ended up coasting these last few meters and crossing the line in 12th place, which I was excited about, because even though I know I could have done better, and tactically, I ended up starting the sprint later than I should have. And what I mean by that is, if you look, I end up falling a couple meters back, about a second or so back off the back of the peloton as we were making the U-turn. And because of that, I had that gap between me and the Peloton, and then to get through the rest of the Peloton in order to make up the distance that I did. And so, like I said, that ended up resulting in me being the second fastest through the sprint segment, which I was excited about, because I know that's a good performance. Even after, few days of racing, that's still, good performance. But at the end of the day, I know that if I started my sprint, if I would have pushed and stayed in the middle of the pack or towards the front, and I started my sprint from there, I could have probably ended up in the podium, or, somewhere top 10, higher up on the top 10, closer to podium. So just wanted to share that. Sometimes tactics, don't play out like you want them to, but that is the name of racing. So hope you enjoyed, and I will catch you guys on the next one.
Hey guys, Miguel from that thing you just watched. If you know where that reference is from, please leave it down in the comments below. One of my favorite channels to review content. So I'll leave it at that. But if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button, watch videos, playlists, whichever pop up. But thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I hope to see you next time.